Frances Moore Lapp, author of Diet for a Small Planet, asks in the foreword to her book, "Why has this information I have gathered not been easily available long before now, and why is it being presented by someone who is neither a nutritionalist nor an ecologist?" Perhaps the answer is that we have neglected vital questions because of fixed cultural attitudes, which regulate non-meat protein to an inferior position. The fact that the first comprehensive research in plant protein became available only 6 months ago illustrates this meat-centered bias. Another generalist who has done the public a great service in democratizing the exploding science of the animal man and at the same time made specialists snap to attention is Robert Ardrey, ex-dramatist and author of African Genesis, The Territorial Imperative, and The Social Contract. We feel our generalism has given us the advantage of an energy which could not be available to one long confined to a pigeonhole. Aside from our generalism, one other credential I offer for my own participation in the preparation of this book is that I have looked on both sides now. I have juxtaposed 4 years of something like life in a large American city with 3 years of intimate life with Brazilian self-sufficient farmers. Brazil is no South Sea island, and yet the lesson to me was unmistakable. Those self-sufficient Brazilian farmers, in spite of the blows they have sustained at the butt end of centralization's cruel joke, in spite of high infant mortality, in spite of material poverty, lead a far more healthy, satisfied, wholly understood, the only word is human, existence than do any urban or even rural Americans I have known. 2 years later, in the forgotten corners of Venezuela, the lesson was the same. I guess one has to see it to believe it. I have seen it, and I believe it, and that is the credential I offer. Quote, "When the sun rises, I go to work. When the sun goes down, I take my rest. I dig the well from which I drink. I farm the soil that yields my food. I share creation. Kings can do no more." Ancient Chinese proverb, 2500 BC. Again, on a personal note, perhaps I should explain that unlike well-financed quote-unquote dropouts that could afford to play, I have been held back economically from getting involved in a time-consuming specific experiment. Thus I have enviously scanned the field and lived in a fantasy world collecting information that sometime might be useful to me should I escape. Then I began to realize the worth of the information I was collecting to others who are managing to escape. That is a partial derivation of this book. We, the authors of this book, are not in cultural isolation. We are part of a movement. The movement is at least as old as the Industrial Revolution and has been continuous, although it has had visible crests around 1920 during the Depression years, and from roughly 1969 onward. The Whole Earth Catalog has been the movement's most notable and recent success. Describing the movement in exact terms is as frustrating as trying to describe the related quote-unquote hippie movement, or student revolutionism, or the pot culture, or the word funky. It is elusive of description, but one knows when one is part of it, and one can tell that the moment is ripe now. It is becoming generally suspected now that our culture and our centralized state is failing. The paucity of alternatives keeps us in line, but people are now searching more avidly than ever before for alternatives. In their searching, one often sees pitiful things done, but more to be pitied is he to whom the vast changes and collapses of the coming years will come as a surprise. While the forces have mounted against centralization, certain conditions for facilitating a return to a decentralized state have mounted as well. The industrialized country's people will make a literate, well-educated peasantry, something known previously perhaps only in Israel. Culturally, they are children, but like children, they have a tremendous capacity to learn. They may be able to break their technological fall as they decentralize. They have, besides the use of written information, a few new tools like methane generators, and a few new materials like thermal insulation, inexpensive aluminum, and inexpensive glass, which may make an enormous difference in the quality of life possible in the future. Similarly, electronics, if used carefully, can be used to decentralize a population as much as it has been used to centralize one. Whether or not these conditions, tools, and materials can be saved from the sinking ship of centralization will be demonstrated in the next few decades. The social, political, psychological, and religious implications of the movement this book grows out of are vast. We will, however, not touch upon them. This is not because we do not consider them important. Rather, our generality is already being stretched to the snapping point, and we have chosen to limit ourselves as much as possible to the measurable world of the natural sciences. I would allow myself one word, however, about the political implications of the movement. I assert that a decentralized nation, or one of homesteaders, is not necessarily a weak nation in terms applicable to the future. The results of Forrester's models suggest this. Probably, since we have cursed ourselves with nuclear weapons, we have likewise cursed ourselves with the eternal need for a world government. Nonetheless, aside from nuclear defense, the more widely dependent a nation is, like the U.S. on the Middle East, the more vulnerable that nation is. National security is not our concern, however, but rather ecological morality. Withdrawing our support from our centralized industrial culture is ecologically the most moral action we are capable of, short of eliminating our own species. And I'm in easy distance to the end, so I will stop there.